Welcome to Cardinals Cover 2 with Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki. Cardinals Cover 2 is brought to you by Arizona Cardinals Podcasts. Visit azcardinals.com/podcasts. From the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, here's Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki.
Well, we've known the who and the where. Now we know the when, as the 2019 regular season schedule has been released. Got it right here in my hands. Hot off the presses, as they like to say in the business, MJ. Special edition of Cards Cover 2 here as we talk about the release of the schedule. Highly anticipated, and we have it. 16 games, 4 preseason games, and let's not waste any time. Let's take a look at what we've got here for the 2019 regular season schedule. Cardinals will actually open up at home. Your first opportunity to see head coach Cliff Kingsbury week 1 against the Detroit Lions at 1:25. And, the Cardinals and the Lions very familiar with one another. This will be the 3rd straight season and 7th time in 8 seasons overall that they have played one another. Then the Cardinals will go on the road for the first time at Baltimore, and then back-to-back home games against the Panthers and Seahawks. And as you noted when you saw this schedule, MJ, the Seahawks game, the only division opponent for the Cardinals in the first half of the year.
Yeah, and so that means you're going to have 5 in the second half. We'll be able to get into that. But, yeah, that's one thing that sticks out. In Seattle, I think early in Russell Wilson's career, they played here pretty early in the season. And last year, I think it was week 4 after the Bears game. So 1 division game in the first 8, and then 5 in the last 8.
So after back-to-back home games, the Cardinals in the month of October won't be at State Farm Stadium much at all. Road games at Cincinnati, at the Giants, and at the Saints. They'll host the Falcons on Sunday, October 13th. And then at the end of the month, the one and only primetime game for the Cardinals comes Halloween night against the 49ers at State Farm Stadium. 5:20 is the kickoff. And just like last season, 1 primetime game, and it was the Thursday night contest. This season, once again, 1 primetime game, and it's the Thursday night contest. But the good news is, 1, you're at home, and 2, it's a division opponent.
Yeah, and you obviously got to take care of business with your home games, and we know that wasn't the case last year, but they did beat the Niners twice out of the 3 wins, and so obviously a healthy Jimmy Garoppolo is going to go a long way. We'll see what they decide to do in the draft, and again, you got to take care of business in the division, whether it's, you'd love to sit here and say 4-2, but worst case scenario, 3-3. We know how difficult it is to play in Seattle, even though the Cardinals been, good up there. They've been able to win it on the road. And then, the Rams, I don't think they got a home field advantage, but they got a really talented roster. And then, obviously, you look at San Francisco, you got to think they're going to be better with a Jimmy Garoppolo at the helm.
So Cardinals with 3 of their first 4 games at home, 4 of their first 6 at home. The second half of the season is a lot of travel following that Thursday night contest against the 49ers. Back-to-back road games at Tampa Bay, and then you play the 49ers again in San Francisco. 2 games against the 49ers in 18 days. That's good for preparation, but it also hinders as far as preparation too, because you're not going to change a whole lot, and depending on injuries and everything, that's kind of rare when you face a team so soon after a first meeting.
Yeah, I mean, we always know that normally the schedule over the last couple of years, you're going to have division games in week 15 and 6 or week 16 and 17. We'll get into that. So at some point, if you only have 1 division game in the first 8, you got to somehow get these games in, and 2 games in, as you mentioned, 18 days.
Got good news for you, though. You'll get to spend Thanksgiving with your family because the Cardinals will be off. The bye week happens to be the week of Thanksgiving, so no game that week. And then coming out of the bye, great way to kind of close out the regular season, at least the start of the month of December. 3 straight home games. Host the Rams, the Steelers, and the Browns. Of course, those are 3 very formidable foes, Baker Mayfield and all the Cleveland Brown connections coming to State Farm Stadium December 15th. Cardinals will close with 2 games on the road at Seattle and at the Rams, much like they did in 2016 with those same 2 trips at Seattle and at the Rams to wrap it up on December 29th.
And as Jimmy Omohundra, our producer, pointed out, that could be the final game, if not on paper, when it comes to playing in the Coliseum. Obviously, they're already moving to their new stadium, so curious to see, who's playing for what in that game. Obviously, if you hope you're in contention. If not, you play a spoiler role. But that's a tough schedule after the Niners.
Closing schedule.
Yes, I mean, you mentioned the Rams at home, Steelers at home, Browns at home. That's good to get them at home. And then you got to go on the road in Week 16 and 17 against the Seahawks and the Rams, and we know they can be difficult opponents.
But good, because I think with a first-year head coach, first-year coaching staff, to have so many games uploaded or upfronted as far as at home early in the season. So, and as you said, it's always you got to play well at home, get off to a good start, because it's more so than any other season in recent memory, just because of what the month of December looks like. And yeah, you got 3 home games in December, but those opponents, Rams, Steelers, Browns, Seahawks, Rams, I mean, you're just looking at that and thinking right now here in April, forecast playoff teams, every single one of them.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, you take away, the Niners game, but for the most part, I mean, I like the fact that they're getting these guys at home, as you said, because, and again, this will give the organization a little bit more time to go against some of the division opponents, considering you only have Seattle in Week 4, but clearly got to get off to a good start. So in the first half of the season, you have two AFC games, Baltimore on the road, so that'll be T-Sizzle going back home. And then you have the Bengals on the road, and then you obviously have the Browns and Steelers. So you look at some of the conference games, you want to make sure you take care of business in your conference, but at the end they tally up how many wins you have. So got to take care of business at home, got to take care of business in your division, and you're going to have to squeeze out a couple road wins.
Overall, how do you like, and again, it's everyone looks at it and say, oh, it plays real well, or I don't like this schedule. And then the schedule, you get to the schedule, and, depending on injuries or how you feel, or, hey, it's better that we do have the bye week so late in the season as opposed to halfway through, or it would be great if we had it earlier in the season. It's tough to tell right now, but just on paper, looking at it, what do you think on how the Cardinals will match up here in 2019?
Well, I mean, over the last couple of years, they've had, the bye week in Week 10 and Week 11 here. The bye weeks start in Week 4, and then they end in Week 12. So in normally, the first couple of bye weeks, you have, 4 teams out, and then we get a little bit heavier into the schedule. 6 teams are off. So I would prefer it a little bit maybe in the middle, but, it's going to be based on injuries. You just can't predict what's going to happen, but it's nice to get a rest. Because you got a really tough opponents. After that Rams game, or before that Rams game, you got to get healthy, because those are tough opponents. I know that the Browns have been more hyped, but they got a good roster, and they got a rookie coach, even though he was there last year. So it just seems like you're going to have to scratch out some road wins, but you have to have a winning record at home, and you'd like to see at least a 500, if not better, inside the division. So it is what it is. I like the fact that they're opening up at home. I think it's a winnable game. I thought the Redskins game was winnable last year. And then obviously Baltimore, the whole Suggs angle, and Lamar Jackson. We'll see if he's more of a pocket passer. But for them, and then Carolina's been an Achilles heel for us over the last couple of years now. The roster's not the same. They don't have the same players, but they still have Cam Newton and a couple of guys that can stretch the field. So, and then you get the Seahawks, and we know that they play tight, and Cardinals should have won that game last year. So I want to get off to a good start and then try to scratch out some road wins.
So the 2019 regular season schedule is out. Tickets available as well. Go to azcardinals.com/tickets. And also something that you can do as well, and I just did it as well. Very simple, but you can get this 2019 schedule right on your mobile device. Go to azcardinals.com/schedule, and then you'll see across the top, sync to your advice. Click on that, follow the instructions, and you'll have reminders and the entire schedule on your mobile device, tablet, cell phone, whatever it is, right there handy. Again, very simple. MJ can even do it.
Yeah, I've already did it.
See? Told you. Simple.
Well, it was simple because you just got to push a couple buttons. I mean, just go to azcardinals.com. We got the schedule there for you. We got single game tickets, which usually doesn't come out until a little bit later, but jump on them now. I mean, I think there's some fascinating home matchups. And again, we got to protect the nest. That's
Absolutely.
what has to happen this year. Protect the nest, okay? Take care of business at home. And like we said, we'll see about the second half schedule because it looks like murderer's row. But we don't know who's playing in that game. We
True.
can assume who all the starting quarterbacks are. We're not going to bore you doing that. We'll worry about that when we get there. But get off to a good start, considering you got 3 of the 4 at home. You got some NFC opponents. You got a division game. But you're going to have to somehow, go on the road and do you have the numbers in front of you, how many early starts for the Redbirds?
There are 4 10 a.m. starts for the Cardinals. A year ago, they just had 1 10 a.m. start, so that might be something that
There you go.
Is a little bit of a factor because those 10 a.m. starts all in the first half of the season, and of course the first one is the Baltimore game in week 2.
Now, we haven't gotten into the preseason schedule. We know what the teams are. We have official dates. The Cardinals are going to play an early game in the preseason against the Minnesota Vikings, 10 a.m. our time. So I know it's a preseason. You don't know how much your starter is going to play, even though that's the third one, right? So when you look at that, curious to see. But getting up and going on the road and playing a 10 a.m. game, maybe that will help them in week 2 when they head to Baltimore. So we have the preseason schedule, dates and times. Cardinals open up at home the first 2, and then they go on the road.
Yeah, and 3 of those preseason games on a Thursday, which is highly unusual, but the Chargers game on a Thursday, the Raiders game on a Thursday, and that will be nationally televised on ESPN, and then, of course, the final one at Denver on a Thursday, but that one always, the 4th and final preseason game, always on a Thursday. And then, of course, you talked about the 10 a.m. start at the Vikings on Saturday, August 24th. And just less than a month later, that week 2 contest at Baltimore, another 10 a.m. start. So perhaps something that the Cardinals can prepare for and kind of get a run-through, if you will, as far as how to deal with a 10 a.m. start, because we know that has been an issue for the Cardinals when they head east, not being able to be ready for that kickoff at 10 a.m., at least body clock time and Arizona time. Always fascinating on when the schedule is released. We know the when, but the question now is, how were the Cardinals informed on how this 2019 schedule would look like? Well, azcardinals.com had the cameras rolling as team president Michael Bidwell got the phone call from the league office.
Hello, this is Blake.
Hey, Blake, Michael Bidwell here. How are you?
If you are ready, I can go through your 2019 regular season schedule.
I'm ready.
Week 1, we have you opening up hosting the Detroit Lions. That is Sunday, September 8th.
Perfect. Okay.
Week 7 at the New York Giants. Week 9, you'll be hosting Thursday Night Football, San Francisco, October 31st. Week 10 at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Okay.
Week 12 is your bye week.
A little late.
And week 17 at the Los Angeles Rams.
Blake, thanks so much for the call. I appreciate it. I got it. You ready?
I'm ready.
We start at home. In fact, 4 of our first 6 are at home. That's the good news. The Thursday night football break, and then
Right.
2 weeks later we get the bye.
It's a good spot for the break.
Now we can start getting ready.
No doubt.
We got
Now
other
we know
things
what we
on.
got going.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there it is from team president Michael Bidwell, and then going into Cliff Kingsbury's office to tell him about the schedule and that bye week. Again, it is Thanksgiving week, a little bit late. That was my initial thought.
Week 12.
Same as Michael's, but when a coach, maybe, again, it might just depend on how the team is doing and where they are as far as health on whether week 12 is good or not. But just on the surface, for family reasons, that's Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, it's been a while since the Cardinals have played on Thanksgiving. I want to say Philadelphia a few years ago. This is a tweet from Dave Pash. Thank you, NFL, for scheduling the Arizona Cardinals road games at Baltimore in September, at Cincinnati and New York in October, and at Tampa in November. He says, weather watcher.
Yeah, but as we discussed, he's in a press box. It doesn't matter unless
traveling.
For traveling, though, because yes, Pash is doing a college game on Saturday. So okay, for travel purposes, that's fine. But for actual game day, the only one that really benefits from this schedule as far as weather, we've discussed, is Chris Melvin with the media relations department, because he's down on the field and has to deal with the elements. But that Seattle game, December 22nd, could be. That could be interesting, because you never know what's going to happen in Seattle.
No, exactly. Now we don't have to face Seattle in Week 17 this year.
No, that was last year.
Well, it seems like it's happened over and over.
Yeah.
And you only can have a couple options.
Well, division games, too,
yeah.
you want to close out. But the Cardinals are wrapping up on the road again for
last
another
2
year.
games.
Yes.
So you want to get around 7-8 wins going, and possibly 9 wins going into that, because I know the teams have made it 9-7. I think you got to win 10 now. The NFC is loaded. So, but if you're in contention in Week 15, 16, hey, you're building something. That means you've shown a lot of improvement from this year compared to last year.
Of course, it is all about the home schedule for the second straight year. Cardinals have 3 of their first 4 games at State Farm Stadium. It is always important to get off to a good start. That means we need the fans in attendance as well. azcardinals.com/tickets to jump on board for any or all of the games at home for the Arizona Cardinals in 2019. And if you need some help to pick up that phone or to dial or to punch in the keys on the keyboard or on the mobile device, well, how about this? To protect the nest, a home schedule teaser.
I get chills.
Seriously, if you can't get excited,
I'm ready right now
about the schedule after watching and listening to that. Yeah, very well done by the Emmy Award-winning Cardinals broadcasting department. The home schedule, again, azcardinals.com/tickets. Cardinals with 3 of their first 4, 4 of their first 6 at home. And, of course, they'll open Week 1 against the Detroit Lions as we kind of now look at this schedule by quarters, breaking it up to 16 games over increments of 4. And as we discussed, it's important to get off to a good start because you've got so many home games early on. In fact, September, you're only traveling once, and that is at Baltimore. Terrell Suggs' return to the Ravens. But Lions, Panthers, and Seahawks, 3 home games out of the first 4. And, of course, the Seahawks game, an earlier contest against Seattle than we're normally used to seeing, but certainly the one division opponent that the Cardinals will play in the first half of the season.
Yeah, just looking at the month of September, 3 out of the 4 against NFC opponents. Of course, you got to go on the road, and we're going to play the AFC North this year. A couple of games, and we host a couple here. So I'm sure T-Sizzle is going to be fired up to go back to Baltimore. I'm sure they'll have a little video tribute for him. He had a great career there, but he's wearing Cardinal red now, so he's got to get after the quarterback. But again, home schedule, conference games, get off to a good start.
The next 4 games for the Cardinals, you'll see them be on the road for 3 of those contests. They'll be at Cincinnati, at the Giants, and then at the Saints. And the question now becomes, might the Cardinals stay back east, going from New York to New Orleans? That was something that will be discussed, I'm sure, over the next several weeks here as you kind of figure out maybe it's possible, and we've seen teams do it, whether they travel east or travel west, and the Cardinals certainly have done it before. But, again, in the month of October, you're looking at it, and that's 3 10 a.m. starts. The Cardinals with 4 overall 10 a.m. starts, and then adding 1 in the preseason. But they better be ready. Let's just say that, because the schedule, as they say, is the schedule.
Yeah, and the Falcons, obviously they changed coordinators. They still got Matt Ryan there. We'll see. What they're going to do with Dirk Cutter. He's the play caller there. We don't know if the Giants are going to draft a quarterback. Obviously, we're going to see Eli Manning. And I got to think the Saints are probably a 10, 11, 12-win team. Once again, 3 conference games and 1 AFC game. You got to scratch some road wins, and hopefully it comes, because that is a daunting task, going on the road to Cincinnati. We don't know about them, new coach. We'll see who the quarterback is, but obviously Giants, Saints, and you got to scratch them out. I hate to be redundant, but that's something we didn't see last year. I know they won in Green Bay, and they were able to win in San Francisco, but you got to win some road games.
The Cardinals have not won in New Orleans since 1996, and of course with Drew Brees and company, that's not going to be an easy contest by any stretch, because it is always tough to play inside the Mercedes-Benz, the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. I'm getting confused with the Falcons. But it's certainly a daunting task, as you said, in the month of October. Then as you get to Week 9 and the next 4 games for the Cardinals, just looking at the contest. And, of course, it begins with a Thursday night on Halloween night, the one and only primetime game against San Francisco. But this 4-game stretch, 3 NFC West opponents, and the 49ers twice in 18 days.
Yeah, and you look at this, you're talking division games, 3 out of 4, and you're talking 4 NFC conference games. And so in that place, you'd like to go 3-3, 4-2 in the division. And, again, you only have 1 division game in the first 8, and then you have 5 in the second half of the season.
And, of course, the Tampa Bay contest, a reunion with former head coach Bruce Arians. Cardinals have won 4 straight in the series with the Buccaneers, but that'll be interesting to see Coach Arians on the other side of the field after
a lot of familiar
1 year
faces
in the broadcast booth. Absolutely. The entire coaching staff and some players as well. Daniel Buchanan now with the Buccaneers.
Did you see they have 29 coaches on their staff?
Yeah, the most
29.
I should say the largest coaching staff in 2019, and I think I thought I read that it was the largest ever.
You see 22, 23, and I know he's hired a former official to officiate their practices. He's hired 2 females to be on the coaching staff. So, that's why you got the number 29, but that's not normal for an NFL team.
The third quarter, if you will, of the season, the next 4 games, and this is where the bye comes in, because it is the week of Thanksgiving, and a little bit later with a Week 12 bye week, but we'll see how much of a factor that is. And the Cardinals certainly looking at I think that bye week is going to be, I'm just going to say it right now, it's going to be good that it is in Week 12.
It's hard to gauge. We just don't know about injuries, but it is what it is. Hopefully you're playing well, and you don't want to have the bye week to kind of get you out of. But if on the other side, if maybe that you're going to need the rest, because the stretch run is really, it's going to be tough. I mean, just on paper, I know they don't play on paper, but you got your work cut out.
And that Rams game on December 1st will kick off a 3-game homestand for the Cardinals going into the last quarter of the season. A daunting task. That's the word. I'll steal it from you, MJ, that you've kept using. But those final 4 games are against the Steelers, the Browns, and then on the road at the Seahawks and at the Rams. Of course, with the Steelers, that has been Roethlisberger, Mike Tomlin, and then, of course, with the Browns, that's Baker Mayfield and Freddie Kitchens, another familiar face, a former Cardinals coach, and then, of course, the connection with Kingsbury and Mayfield back in the college days.
Well, don't forget about Steve Wilkes.
That's right. Defensive coordinator.
The NFL Network was going through revenge games, and they had the Cardinals and Browns revenge games, and they showed Coach Wilkes. He's not playing, but he's on the other side.
Yeah, but he'll want that game.
Definitely.
4-3 defense? Never mind. And then
It's going to be a 4-2-5.
And then closing out at Seattle, 8th straight season the Cardinals will play in Seattle after December 1st, and then the Cardinals in Week 17 making their final regular season visit to L.A. Memorial Coliseum. Cardinals in 2020 are scheduled to move into a new stadium in Inglewood. I'm sorry, what did I say?
Cardinals,
yeah. No, the Cardinals have a new stadium. They're fine. The Rams move into a new stadium in Inglewood.
Now, I'm sure in previous days where you're working and whether it was on radio, did anybody ever say, what's the good record going to be?
Yeah, I'm not. You
check
can't.
back.
The draft hasn't even happened yet.
No, we don't know of injuries. Now, it's kind of fun to project, but it's difficult because I can look at the quarterbacks and the head coaches you're playing against, but I understand it's more just comical to see if it comes to fruition, but it's just hard to predict. I mean, we know how important it is for this team to protect the nest, and they need the fans there. And 3 out of 4, 4 out of 6 at home, let's show up because they're going to need that, and we need a much better record at home this year, much better. I mean, let's get back to the days where it was difficult to come in State Farm Stadium with the crowd noise and the false starts and, playing with a lead and being competitive and scoring points. All that's going to go a long way, especially at home. But again, you got to get some road wins.
azcardinals.com/tickets to help fill up State Farm Stadium. Now, a couple of notes, and we talked about the second half of the regular season on how daunting it is, but a note that should be mentioned is that the Cardinals only will travel once over the final 9 weeks of the regular season east of Arizona, and that is to Tampa Bay. Otherwise, San Francisco, Seattle, Los Angeles, those are all West Coast trips, so only one long flight for the Cardinals over the last 9 weeks of the regular season.
Yeah, that's good because you don't want to be on the East Coast, especially that time of the year. We obviously look at some of the East Coast games early on, Bengals and then the Giants, and then you throw in the Saints. But for the most part, yeah, I think it sets up. Now, again, you got to stay healthy, and you can't predict it. It happens. You just hope you can stay healthy. But it'd be interesting to see where they are going into the bye week.
A couple of other things as far as looking at the Cardinals' opponents, and all credit to Mark Dalton and the media relations department on this. The Cardinals will not see any team coming off their bye week. That is good. However, when they play the Giants and play the Panthers, those two teams will have played on a Thursday, so they'll have extra time to get ready for the Cardinals. On the flip side, when the Cardinals play Cincinnati and when they play San Francisco in Week 11 and the Rams in Week 13, those three teams will have played on Monday night, so less time, 1 day less, to prepare for the Cardinals, especially with the 49ers and Rams late in the season.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you get a lot of primetime games. Got a short week.
Well, speaking of primetime games, the Cardinals are the only NFC West team without an appearance on Monday Night Football. 49ers show up twice, Seahawks twice, and the Rams once.
Well, the only thing I can say about that, if you get a nice record late in the year, we got what they think called flexing,
yep.
But you got to win. I mean, you got to be in contention, and hopefully we're talking about, games against the Rams and Steelers and Browns and Seahawks and Rams again. Where are you? Hopefully they can get a game that's flexed out. But again, you got to win games. You got to get to double digits at some point. But every schedule's tough just because every team's different from the year before. We got to, they're going against a few rookie head coaches here. Obviously, Arians has been in the league, but he's still his first year in Tampa. So I always think it's difficult. I don't care. Now, I haven't looked at the mileage and all that stuff because, we know that Seattle's one of the most traveled team, and the Rams have been because they always go to London now because they give up a home game. So it is what it is, and, I can't emphasize it enough. Got to get off to a good start. You got to protect the nest.
azcardinals.com/tickets. And, of course, if you want the 2019 regular season schedule on your mobile device, go to azcardinals.com/schedule and then click on Sync to Your Device. And that's where you'll have it all with you at all points of the day right there on your mobile device. You'll know when, where, and now also when the Cardinals will play in 2019. So the much-anticipated 2019 schedule has been released. Next up, the much-anticipated 2019 NFL Draft coming 1 week from tomorrow.
Yeah, like you said, we knew the opponents. Now we know when, what time, what week. But really, if we're talking about this team making strides, they gotta cash in the draft, and I know that's the expectation. Steve did a really good job last year. I know they are doing their due diligence when it comes to that first overall pick, and they got the first pick in the second round, third round, fourth round. So if you want to win some games, this is part of the process, getting a good draft class.
Of course, week 1, September 8th against the Detroit Lions. And, of course, we'll be covering it for you all here on Cards Cover 2. And that's going to wrap up this special edition of Cards Cover 2, the schedule release. Special thanks to those behind the scenes, Tim Delaney, Jim Omohundro, Jackson Sipes. For Mike Jurecki, I'm Craig Grialou. We'll talk to you next week here on Cards Cover 2.